Let it
Let it
flow.
flow wherever it needs to go.
Is
You
it
know,
Let It Snow's what's it? What's
let
that
it
movie called?
let it go from Frozen.
But the song's called Let It Snow.
No, the
Why don't you
song
just
is
call the
called Let
movie
It
Let It
Go.
Snow? Oh, the
The song is
song's called.
called.
Oh,
No, the movie's called
I'm pretty sure
Frozen.
it's Let It Snow.
No, Let It Snow is the one that goes. The weather outside is frightful.
Oh yeah, my bad. My ocean is ocean is all.
Right,
Sweet.
we're
We
recording,
can't add that
Babs.
in. We can't add that in. Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon Podcast. The Super Mutants are here, and we are here to defend the club. Um, Shout out to our great friend, man like Lee Gunner.
What a
I tell
man!
you what, like he is funny. I'll give him that. He's very funny.
He's
Very,
he's
very.
deeply entertaining. I disagree with about 98% of what he says, but he is undeniably entertaining. It's
Yeah, he's got that aura. I honestly think like we're just saying not in the football Twitter terms of like attractive. I'm not saying he's a bad looking lad, but like in that
yeah,
aspect. But I'm talking about aura of the way he speaks. It's do
yeah,
you know if you watch WWE if you're growing up with The Rock and like that? I'm not saying
Yeah,
he's
with
The
the guy on
Rock,
the
but
mic.
like in
Yeah,
that
yeah.
aspect he can entertain. So I give him that for sure. But
give him that.
as super
He,
mutants we have to talk about Field Tilt.
for context, to listeners, so our good friend made a video yesterday, and someone had watched our instant reaction where we have a consistent and on-running joke about field tilt and about field tilt being the only thing that matters. This person has completely missed the joke, cut out a little section where it's on the edge of where you can tell whether I'm joking or not, which is fair enough, but the joke is there in the video. Sent it to Lee Gunner, and he's done a whole video about it, and also video on you, Babs. But listen,
Yeah,
I
listen,
this
feel
is
like
what happens in
I was so
international
happy.
breaks.
I
People
feel like
just
that's
get
a rite
bored.
of passage in content creation. This is a big milestone for the
Yeah,
Cannon
yeah,
podcast.
we've
You
made
know,
it.
Honestly, I was sat there, I was celebrating. I was like, yes, I made it. Come on.
Finally, Babs, you get some views.
Yes, about time. Because
uh,
I don't get any of my channel anymore.
uh,
Anyways, let's talk about something that gets a lot of views normally in transfers. Transfers, the window's open, and there's not that many rumours, but Arsenal fans love to fabricate rumours. And there's always that one report out of somewhere in Spain that's talking about a transfer in France because that makes sense. Let's talk some links. Let's talk some links. And I think I want to talk about first things first positions. We always often talk about Arsenal fans talk about strikers, but I think in this pod we often talk about the importance of signing a defender in this window. So, what's that signing, that position that Arsenal need to address this window that could almost transform our season? We'll go to George first.
And why is it Aaron Hickey?
It's not Hiroki. Go on.
look, it's an interesting question because I feel like the defensive department is something that I still maintain is the key and is the priority. Because when I look at injuries going forward, one good thing about the most recent game was that Ben White actually looked a little bit sprite, at least what he hasn't looked like in a couple of weeks. But I am afraid that one injury means Cedric Suarez, and I'm not comfortable with that very real reality. And then I kind of look at William Saliba, most 90 minutes played and most minutes played in the squad. You lose something like that. It's nice to have a Declan Rice that can slot in, but who replaces him? And we can't rely on Thomas Partey. So there are a couple things that you can do, and a couple buys that you can do. I do believe that with Tomiyasu coming back from the Asian Cup, and Timber coming back, you have fullback as a want, but it's maybe not an insane priority because you've got two fullbacks that are coming back within a month. I am a big fan of the use of Fofana. I can't get around that signing. It's the last 18 months of contract. It's got to be no more than 20 to 25 million pounds. And you get somebody that, for me, covers you in multiple areas, because if Declan goes to the back to cover for Saliba, you've got a presence at six that you can trust, that's experienced. Um, he can also play higher up the pitch. He can also play as an eight. So in certain moments, he can play as the community shield role that Declan did. He can play with Declan. I think that he solves both midfield and defense depth in terms of at least central center back. And so it's probably the easiest deal as well that I can see us doing, because it's one thing to talk priority, but what's feasible? And that has to come into the calculus, right? Like I can sit there and say it'd be nice to get another winger option, which, by the way, if we did, you look at Nico Williams' 50 million pound release clause as something that you're eyeing. But for all intents and purposes, we've been told that we don't have a lot of cash. I'm not too sure how much I believe of that, but I certainly don't think that we're flush with it. And so I think, like, even in the case of a Youssef Fofana, and say like Alex, like we're using kind of what you've had as an analysis, I don't see how producing almost half of that fee is unacceptable for a club. I mean, you can absolutely amortize it, and even if they've demanded the unreasonable amount of 50% up front, you can do it with Youssef Fofana. Like, that's the point.
I would like to offer a correction, and I'd like to thank one of our patrons. It was Greg Beals on Patreon who forced me to have a look at this, and he's right. I wish I could tell you who the guy is because he's such a good contact. Anyway, I went to my guy, my FFP man who explains things in baby terms for idiots like me. And essentially he said that you can. So last time I said you can't do this, and it turns out you can do this. You can pay, let's say 30. Say you're signing a Nana. Not that one, the one from Everton. You were signing, 30 million. So you could spend 30 million up front, and it would say a 50 million pound deal on a 5-year contract. You can still put that on your books as 10 million per year. So that for is, sure. I said you couldn't do that, but you can do that apparently.
Well, and that's why I'm saying like the amortization is still an opportunity. Now, look, I don't think that we're flush with cash and that suddenly now, George, we've got 80 million pounds to spend. That's the other end of the spectrum that I just don't buy, right? And by the way, I don't even think that we're in the 50 million pound price bracket on one player, because for me, we need to maximize the amount of funds used. And I think Youssef Fofana represents a player for me that isn't a mistake. I look at who can actually come in, and it's not just solving a hole. Like, people do this all the time, who is experienced. We are a young squad. We're going into a run-in. Who has experience of Europe? Like, these are some metrics that I would like. And in terms of the unicorn, who can come in and improve the team now, who's experienced, who can play with the squad for several years, who isn't going to cost an arm and a leg, and who isn't going to hinder plans going forward. I genuinely think he ticks every single box. There's not a box that I see with him that isn't ticked.
Can I flip this slightly and put the question to you boys? Because I think a lot of the question is, can we afford a signing, or can we afford this signing or that signing? But I wonder whether the signing thing at the moment feels so like the club needs a boost, right? How much of a hit do you feel? Is it just the fans' perspective? But I'll come to you, Bhavs. Like, do you think it's just the fans who are like, if we don't get a signing, we're done. The club's in the wash. Like, imagine sitting there on January 31st, Arsenal having done no business. Like, the idea of the club needs a boost, even just a signing. How much do you buy that actually goes on internally? Because to me, on some level, especially in the attacking areas, I do think we need a new energy. But I think a lot of that, the problem is that the noise surrounding Arsenal slightly obfuscates how much it's actually going to help the team just getting a signing over the line. I don't know about this Youssef Fofana guy. Maybe yes, maybe no. I haven't watched him enough. But like, I sit here today, like, I feel like we need a signing. But is that actually going to help the team? Do you know what I mean? Especially if it's the wrong guy.
It's good,
and we'll never know if you're on mute, mate. So
yeah, it was a fancy a problem, right? And they want an answer. And because they're already not on the pitch, they're not tacticians, they're not coaches, they think transfers. Transfers are the obvious answer. Yeah. But I always point to a club in West London that apparently is the biggest club in London, who always solve the problems with transfers, and it always ends up getting worse. And it's Chelsea. Every time their fans think, okay, this is the problem, we'll sign a striker, they go sign a player, and it gets worse. I'm not saying you can't improve with transfers, of course you can, that's how Arsenal have improved, but it's sensible transfers. It can't just be transfers for the sake of it, or because you feel like you have to do it. And any player Mikel Arteta will sign won't be off the basis of the last 3 games. He won't have gotten, and there's no player he would have gone, 3 games, we've lost those 3 games, we need to sign this player now. They're not going to panic. And we've seen it in the last couple of Jan windows where on deadline day, apart from maybe last year we signed Jorginho, often fans expect something like the year we could have signed maybe Isak or someone like that. And they weren't moving because they were only signing players they feel that are almost medium to long-term targets that will suit them not just for 1 year, but maybe past that, unless there is like a short-term opportunity, like Jorginho was last year. So I think that's what Arsenal fans need to, especially in January, lower the expectations. Unless the club are able to spend that money, they have a target like Mudryk was last year, and they really want to chase him. And it isn't a club at Chelsea after him either. They won't get that player. And I'm used to it now because we saw it was in that window where we could have gone for Vlahovic, made an offer, he didn't go to Arsenal. Isak, and then there's a scramble with any striker, anyone would do. To the point right now where Arsenal fans are like, Boy Montreal, score a couple goals, sign him. It's that desperation.
And this just quickly, this was what I was saying a couple of pods ago. Like, I don't the amount of things that have to come together, the right player that Mikel actually wants at the right price in this window, based on our FFP, with those players coming, like, there's so many things that need to be ticked. The one thing I will say though is I feel, and this is the problem, it's like delineating between what I and the fans and whatever feel and what the club actually needs is a hard thing. I sense that we could do with some new energy, which is different from a couple of Januaries before. The club have got us here to this position broadly by making the right decisions. And I will never say to the club, don't make the right decision. But I think maybe, and before, the right decision is not making a signing. But I wonder whether this January, the position we're in now, if we can do it, part of the decision making is actually we kind of need a bit of fresh blood at this point in our season. But maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I think I see this with kind of two heads, because I'll be honest with you guys, I absolutely think clubs fold to pressure. Now, have ours done so in the past couple of years? I'm not too sure if we really have. I think we've really done probably one of the best jobs in Europe about walking away from deals, having a financial limit, being disciplined in our approach. I think we're one of the few clubs that have a pretty consistent sample of that. But I must say, like, I mean, there was the overlap special, which I thought, look, Gary Neville's funny. He's got a commentator, but I mean, he does lend some insight into what clubs happen. And, if you do have a set of 3 to 4 targets, and for whatever reason, one, a club will refuse to sell. One, you get outbid for wages. One, the agent presents an insane offer, and so you can't do it. And you start to get down to number 4, 5 on your list. You do get desperate. It is a case of you came in with a plan, and now the plan is changed. Everyone's got a plan till you get punched in the face, and it could absolutely cause certain clubs to panic. And we've seen it with other clubs. So I don't refute the possibility that comes in to it, but I think we've done a really good job about gaining perspective. Look, I think I would probably reverse this question to you guys. Just lastly, what metric do you want to see in a signing? Like, let's take away names and specifics of it. If you were to draw up a 3 bullet point list about what you really believe is needed and the type of player that could actually come and affect us. Because I know I've seen a ton of people on Twitter, not just looking back at the summer in terms of how we could have changed things, but like moving forward now in January, let me give you a certain budget, forget the numbers, but what are the qualities that you need to see in that particular player to say he will have an impact now?
Well, I think we look back at last January, right? And you look at, let's say, Trossard, and come into that tick list. If we gone on to want to win the league, I think Trossard and maybe Jorginho as well. By the way, separate point, Jorginho for £12 million is starting to look like a really, really good business. But Trossard, especially, say we get over the line at the end and he scores a couple more goals. He has that Fulham performance, etc., etc. We're all sat there in the story of 22-23 going, that signing was one of the key moments. It got us over the line. One of the things that got us over the line. So when I'm looking at players for this season, I'm having that in the back of my mind and I'm going, what did Trossard bring? It was a new energy. It was something unpredictable. Someone who was willing to, even now, he's the one player in our team who I go, you get him on the edge of the box, I don't know what he's about to do. So although I feel we need something defensively and maybe defensive midfield wise to sort of shore that up in terms of numbers, what I would really love in that tick list that you mentioned is someone in the forward areas who is unpredictable and doesn't need to be the future of the position. So, it could be a loan signing, it could be a prospect, but someone who can come in and just give us something like, like Nuno Tavares plays like a YouTube compilation. Like, he's not the perfect player in any sense. He's not right for us. And this player potentially might not be right for us long term, but someone who can come in and, say we could do a Jeremy Doku-esque deal. Someone who you come in and you just go, oh my God, this isn't the finished article, but this guy's got something. That's almost what I think the Mudryk thing was last summer. Someone who can maybe it's pace, maybe it's decision making, maybe it's aggression. I don't know what it is, physical size, whatever. But something that we don't have. That's what I want. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe that's an overlap because a lot of Arsenal fans talk about maybe a fullback signing, especially on the left hand side when you've got the idea of Martinelli playing more centrally. I think George has talked about this in the past, of having a more overlapping left back. And so I don't see us signing an attacker in this window, but if we sign a fullback, could that be transformative?
I think so. I mean, I've suggested in the past, and I've put a name out there that I believe is feasible. Patrick Dorgu. Like I think on platforms like this, there's time to speak in like platitudes, and then there's time to speak very specific. And I think one of the specific things that a Patrick Dorgu brings, by the way, not just is it a feasible signing from a Serie A team in Lecce, who are a very good team right now, well, mid-table in Serie A, they're doing pretty well for themselves, but we've got a prospect that can grow, that we can grow with. But he provides something that I think the team and that dynamic are missing. In the defensive groups right now, how many people would you describe as having electric pace? I don't think I would. I think everyone's very athletic and they're very strong, but electric pace, I think that's a hole. And so for me, it's really important that when we recruit, we don't recruit redundancy. And the one thing that I looked at with Trossard, by the way, it was very short term and he did a brilliant job. But then I was always wondering, there's a lot of similarity to Jesus here. Like, we're going to have to make a decision in 2 years on that. I'm happy to do it if it gets us over the line and we're able to move on. But I'm a big fan of making sure that we make our money value. And for me, if we're going to do a fullback, mate, it has to be somebody with dynamism, with some serious ground running power that can offer us a different level of running. Because I don't think that our defensive group lack passers. I don't think our defensive group lack intricate play moving into midfield. We have that type. And so when I start to see these other types that come around, I need to see a difference. And I look at Kieran Tierney, Nuno Tavares. These are sales that are coming up very, very soon. And one of my biggest frustrations with the Kieran Tierney deal, just to end on this, was not that he was gone. Everybody has a subjective opinion on the player, but why didn't the club recruit a profile to replace him? Because they also got rid of Nuno Tavares. So it's no problem getting rid of these players, but you should have a profile replacement for them.
Remove profiles. And I think, just very briefly to finish off, like, part of the reason I think our right-hand side isn't functioning as well as it has done is the lack of Ben White's kind of athletic runs. There was a point this season where he was hitting those numbers, but I do think we all feel that lack of support on the right hand side isn't helping. So even if you can have somebody who comes on in the last 20 minutes, just give Saka that extra bit of space. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. It depends, and I think, especially in terms of, I'm not sure if you guys have seen that progression graphic which shows Arsenal's progression numbers this season.
Oh,
and
how
George has. It's on his bedroom wall.
And on that left hand side, there is clearly a bit of an issue. Listen, Havertz is not progressing on the ball as well as Xhaka was last year. I've got a question, and you can both answer it if you want. What do you think, and it doesn't have to be this season or next year, but what do you think, is Mikel Arteta's final four midfield in terms of what it looks like? Maybe not in terms of players, but what it would look like in terms of dynamics. We'll go to Alex here.
Thanks for checking out the Cannon Podcast. To hear the full episode, sign up as a YouTube member on this channel or go to patreon.com/thecannonpod.